Welcome back to Final Cut Pro. So today we're going to take a deep dive into titles, animate them, everything that you would want to do with the basic titles that come with the program. Now you will see some other titles that I have installed, that I've created, or I've purchased, but we're going to be focused on just the titles that you get stock out of the gate. Where in the world are the titles located? Up here. You notice we've got our clips, and we've got our clips right here. I've loaded 2 clips down here. The next thing that we have over here, which is this little icon, is your audio. And the next icon with the T is for type and generators. So we will click that, and it might be closed like this. Notice we have titles and generators. We'll come back to generators in a second because we're going to actually use the solid colors here. But for right now, we'll just go ahead and close that, open up our titles. And the main titles you're going to have access to are from 3D down to elements. All this is stuff that I've added to the program, but you're going to have stuff to work with. Don't get nervous or worry about stuff like that. So let's click on the first one. And when we do that, you'll notice a whole bunch of little icons appear over here. And below those icons, we have basic 3D, custom 3D. These are basically telling you kind of what this does. This one is 3D and it has a fade. This one over here scales, this rotates. So how can we see what they do? Well, there's 2 ways to do it. One, you can take your cursor up in here and you are going to just slowly scroll to the left or the right. So if I go to the right, it's just going to run it through. Now it's easier if you click it, so it's highlighted, and then you can simply hit the space bar and that's going to loop it. So I hit the space bar and it's going to loop. So it's going to keep running through and through and through. Now, if I want to see another one, all I need to do is click on him. And because I haven't pressed the space bar again, it's going to keep looping that one. And I can go through here and it's going to keep looping that until I hit the space bar again, and then it will stop. Let's say I don't like any of these. We can go down to the next one, 3D cinematic. Like before, I can come over here, hit that space bar, let it run through, see if it's something that I like. We've got 360, build in and out, but what we're going to take a look at is this bumper opener because it has the basic title, the simplest thing that we get. And when we select that over here in our window, which I've got to fit this screen here, it has a simple basic title. And all this is going to do is have a title over black. The next step is to add this down here. And it's really simple. You're going to left click and hold, drag that down, and we can simply put it before these clips. So it's just the title, or we can put it on top of these clips, in which case you only get the title word. It's dropping out that black. We're going to start off the other way and move this over here, and it's going to run over black. And there's no way in this title to change that background color. So if you want a different color for the title to be on, however you want it to be solid, that's where those generators come in. Let's go ahead and just click on this. We'll just go ahead and use the green. We're going to go ahead and we're going to drop this down before that timeline. And then we're just going to dump this on top. So now we have our title on top of. Now you can create your own custom solids, but we're not going to get into that today. Today we're just focused on the titles. So we're going to close up generator so it's easier to see. And I think we are on bumper opener and we had that basic title. We've selected it and put it on top. Now to work on the titles, you need to select it and you need to make sure your timeline is within it. All right. If you're out here, you're not going to see the title. So if we come in here, we're going to see the title. We'll click and then we'll click on this and we're going to be good to go. If you want to change the duration, you just click and drag back or forth to wherever you want. In this case, we're just going to leave it the same amount as the solid below it. So once again, we'll click on that and we have our title right here. If we want to change what the title says, we click on it. And when we do that, voila, over here, you'll notice we got a new window. And in that new window, it says title. Now this is important. You actually want to change the title over here. It makes it easier. First thing you're going to do is select it. In this program, Whatever you select will be what you change. If you just select the T here, you will only change the T. So let's go ahead and change this to, and I'm going to change this to fancy title. Let's say I want all of this to be capitalized, and select it again. I can hit the caps lock. There's a couple different ways to do this. I could then just hit fancy title and we would be good to go like that. So whatever's selected is gonna be capitalized. So I will cap lock and I'll do fancy title. We're good to go. If I want a second line, and on my case, I'm going to hit return and it's going to give me a new fancy line, and we'll put Final Cut Pro X. Okay. So I've got line 1, line 2. If we select both lines and change something like the size, both are going to change. If we just select the top one, only the top line is going to change. Just like I said before, anything that is selected is going to be what you change. If we select Final Cut Pro and make it smaller, it's going to get smaller. It's not affecting the top portion. So that is the text. Below it, we have the ability to change fonts. Now, what fonts you have available are going to be dependent on what fonts you have installed on your computer. Over here, you can change the way that they work, and each font is going to have its own options. And so this is always going to change depending on the font. So if I come over here and pick this crazy one, and then I go over here, notice it's only got regular because that's the only thing available to it. We'll go back and we'll just stick with this. Right here, we are changing our alignment. And this is a little bit weird. Everyone thinks if you click this justify left or right, it's actually going to justify it way over here. It doesn't. So this is anchored in the center. And what this is doing is justifying left from this point, which is the crosshairs in the center. If you do right, it's actually going to move it left, and it's justifying it from this point this way. In this case, we're just going to leave it here. Same thing with these. That's how that's going to work. We have the ability to change the vertical alignment if we want. We're going to leave this one as is. We can change our line spacing because we have 2 lines. Obviously, if you only have 1 line, there's no way to change the line spacing. The line spacing is the distance in between the 2 words. So as I slide this, you'll notice that nothing happens. Well, why did nothing happen? Because we need to make sure that we have this selected. Now, when we change this, it's changing that distance between these 2 lines. I'm going to hit Command Z to go back. Tracking is going to be the distance between the letters. So as I slide this, it's changing the distance between the letters. And this is actually super helpful in typography. Then we've got baseline, and baseline is similar to line spacing, but it works different. In this case, what we're going to do is I'm going to select just the title, and I'm going to get baseline, and that allows me to move the baseline, which is the bottom line, up and down of this line. So it allows me to independently do it. So in this case, I could do the baseline of this one and move it up and down. Remember, it's very similar to in between. It's just working a little bit differently. Then we have the ability to make everything caps. So in this case, where I don't have caps on that, I can select just that word, hit all caps. It's going to make it all caps. Now, this one is larger than this because this number is at 80%. If I make this go to the left, it's going to make those smaller. If I go to the right, everything will be exactly the same size. We have 2 different ways to move our type. So I can come into this box, left click and hold, and drag it wherever I want. I'm just going to hit Command Z to go back. Or we can come over here and change the position. So I can change X, Y, and Z. Now I'm going to be using a scrubber when I do this. If nobody has ever heard or used a scrubber, I will sort of explain how this works. So I'm going to take my cursor and hover. And you'll notice that when I get over that 0, I get a little arrow that points up and down. It's in blue on my case. I'm going to left click, hold. It's important that you hold. And then if you move your mouse or your finger on your trackpad to the left, it makes the number smaller. In this case, it's moving it to the left. And if I go to the right, it's moving everything to the right and increasing the number. Really what you're doing is going plus or minus. Command Z to go back. Same thing with here. I can change that position by using my scrubber. And then we can do the Z axis so we can zoom in and out, make that a little bit bigger. We can do rotation. So I can change the rotation. I can either come in here and click and drag, or I can come out here and use that scrubber to manipulate that. So that is on the X, Y, Z. Just now, if you do change something, and we'll just go ahead and do rotation, and you do a couple other things and you can't use Command Z without having to make everything else go back, you can come over here and hover over it. And you'll notice right over here, there's a return arrow that we see. All you need to do is that, and that will reset that back to 0 so you can get that. And that works for anything here, or you can do everything. So you can come over here and reset this, and this will totally reset everything back to its original defaults. So that's how you change most of this basic stuff here. We'll come down here to this in a second. We also have something basically like a preset. And what we would do in this case, remember, whatever is selected is going to change. So if I just select the title, I'm going to come up here to normal, and I'm going to go down to either 2D, 3D. In this case, I like the 2D better. So I'm going to come down here and we're going to go to condensed. And you'll notice it changed the fancy title to that condensed font and look. Now that is a whole bunch of different stuff that's been configured in here. I can come in here and hit condensed, and we can do something a little bit different. We'll do this crazy one here. It's changed colors and everything else. Just think of these as presets. If I want to do it to everything, I select everything. Then we go down to something else. We'll do the neon, and boom, just like that, it changes everything to that preset. In this case, I think we'll just go ahead, pick Dream, and that will be good for now. All right, so we're using the Dream. That's got some preset stuff there. We're going to come down here and we're going to go to the next thing that we see, which is face. Then we're going to come down here and we've got a couple options: 3D text, face, outline, glow, drop shadow. Now, when we change this, it is going to change that preset, but that's okay. The first option is to click this, and it's going to give us 3-dimensional text. If we want to change the way the 3-dimensional text is working, we slide on over here to where it says show, click that, and below it, it's going to have a whole bunch of different options. And these are pretty much intuitive. If you want to try them, go ahead. But basically, you can change all this stuff, and it will change the way that the 3-dimensional type looks. I'm not going to go into what each thing does. This is something that you're better off just trying and seeing how it works, rather than me say, do this, do this, do this, because everyone's going to have a different opinion on it. I'm going to turn 3D text off, and we will hide this to get rid of it. Now, face is probably the most important one that you're going to run into, because face actually means color. So we're going to go ahead and show that and open this up. So right here it says fill with, and we have 3 options: color, a gradient, or a texture. We're going to start with color. To change the color, all you got to simply do is either click on the box, the arrow, or right click. So I'll show you the 3 different ways. Click on the box, it brings up this little box. In this case, we have the ability to choose a color by the little pencils. This method, this method, this method. We're going to stick with the pencils for right now, just because it's easy. If I want to change to blue, I change to blue. If I want to change to white, I change to white. We'll get rid of that. Or I can come here to the arrow, and it brings up this little kind of spectrum thing. Just like before, I can hover over a color. We're seeing it over here. I can pick, we don't want to pick green. We want to pick that. I can click there. That gives that color. Or I can come over here and right click, and it brings up that same color spectrum thing as well. I personally like clicking on the box because I like either picking here, or sometimes I use the pencils, and you can use pre-selected colors if you wanted. So you could pick a color like this green, and you could take the green and you could drag it over here if you wanted, and then it would be set in there. So you can make your own custom colors if you want. This isn't the best one to make custom colors, but you get the point. We can change the opacity, so we can lower the opacity of that text. In this case, it's not something that we want to do. We can blur it if we wanted. So one of the quirky things that you run into with the titles here is because I've picked this weird bold thing up here, it limits what I can do down here. What I want to show you next isn't going to work. So what we're going to do is we're going to simply just delete that because this will make life easier for me. I'm going to drag this back down. We're going to come over here. We're going to increase the size. I'm going to call this fancy title again. So we will go to fancy title. Doesn't matter because we're going to end up hitting caps lock. We're going to make everything the same size. And now we've got this big fancy title right here. We're going to scroll down and we're going to go just back to face. And remember, we were working with color. Now we're going to go to gradient. And we're going to go ahead and open the gradient. And this is going to allow us to change this. You can see this dark blue is this down here, and this gray is this color up here. Now, if you want to change these colors, all you need to do is click on these little sliders that we have right here or right here. So if you want to change the dark blue, you would select that one. If you want to select the light blue, you would click on this one. And if we click on it, it gives us a whole bunch of different ways to change the color. First, we could just do these crazy sliders. I'm just going to hit Command Z because we don't want to do that. So I can move those. That's a little bit difficult for, I think, most people to understand. Or you can, once again, click on the box. It brings up the pencils. In this case, I could just pick white, or I could pick a lighter gray. Or you can click this little drop-down arrow and you get that little kind of RGB color spectrum that we see there. And you could simply just pick a color like that. We'll hit Command Z to undo that. Now, once you've picked your color, you'll notice the blue is here and then it kind of gradates up. If you want to change that, there's two different ways to do it. One, you can slide this and that will change where it's transitioning at, or you can just come down here to middle and change that there. That's doing the same thing. And you could do more than just colors if you wanted, but we're just going to keep this simple for now. You can change the way this works. So right now we're doing linear, or you can change this to radial. Radial goes kind of the center and around out. So it's giving you two different options. You can also change the direction. So we could make the direction this way. I think if we go back to linear, it's going to make it make more sense. So we can change the direction of the gradient, the opacity, and you can blur it just as well. So that's gradient. Texture, we don't really have the option or anything to do here. So we're just going to leave that. In this case, I'm just going to keep it on color and we'll leave it at white for right now. I'll go ahead and hide that. We can do an outline, and the outline is exactly what it says. It's giving us a little outline. We can show it. We can scroll down. We can change the color of the outline if we want. So if I want a darker color, we can pick darker. If we want to make the width of the line, we can change that. You have all these options under outline. We'll undo outline. We will hide it. The next thing is glow. So we can make this glow and open that up. I can change the radius to get more glow out of it or less glow. Anything that you want to do. You can change the glow color, opacity, and blur. We'll undo glow. And you have drop shadow. Drop shadow is probably one of the more useful ones. Some of these others are. You can change the drop shadow color, the distance of the drop shadow, the amount of blur of the drop shadow behind it. You can change the opacity of it, and you can change the angle of the drop shadow. I'm going to uncheck that and let it go. So if your type is either over a solid background or in this case, over clip, everything works exactly the same. So in this case, if I wanted to try this and make the color dark, I could come down here over the clip. I could hit show, and then we can pick these different colors to see what they look like over this background. Now, because this background has a high contrast, meaning a white and a dark, it can make text a little bit difficult to read. So there is something that you can do to fix that. First of all, you can pick a type that's easiest to read. Obviously, if we pick a middle gray, it's almost going to be impossible to see. And we can click on some colors. In this case, we're just going to keep the white that off and we're good to go. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select this and go to the end and take my little marker. I'm gonna hit B for blade to cut this. So I've cut this clip. And I did this for a specific reason. In this case, we're gonna click a video and then we're gonna go up here. Same thing like we did before, but now we're not changing the title, we're actually changing the clip. And what we wanna do is opacity. And if we lower that opacity of that clip, and let me drag this back here so you can see, it's darkening it. So if I change this opacity, you can see it's making it darker. Because I'm making it darker, it's making that type pop out more and easier to read. Instead of having a bright background, I have a darker background here, and it makes that font and color easier to read. Now, if we just run this out, and I'll just start from here, you're gonna see it's gonna be a pretty harsh transition from dark to white, and it's making a little flicker because I don't have that lined up exactly perfect. And that's something that we can fix pretty easy. Now let me run that. Yep, and that disappears perfect. All right, so we can come over here to transitions, and we're gonna add a cross dissolve in a couple different spots. So we're gonna take the cross dissolve and add it to the title, and you can see before and after, it's doing a cross dissolve, so it's gonna fade in and fade out. But if I still do that, we're still gonna have a harsh transition here, so we're also gonna add a cross dissolve here, and I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger. And now we're gonna run this from the beginning. You're gonna see that fade in. It's nice and bright, we can see it. And then when we get to the end, you're gonna see it fade out, but both the clip and the title are transitioning out. So it goes pretty seamless into the next one. So you can add any type of transition that you want to a title, but that's just a way to kind of get, in this case, this to look a little bit better because we dark. So in this case, this is, remember, just the basic title that we have here, and we had all those options. We also have some animated things that are going on. So let's take this and we're gonna put this in between these clips right here because it's not something we would really want to do over top of that. And if we kind of scroll through, we can see what's happening. I'm gonna click here and select this because in this case, we have, notice the title box has a box in here. Before we just had the title. This is meaning that each one of these items is separate. So if I want to change where it says title, I need to click on it. And then I can go over here just like we did before. In this case, we'll do fancy. I'm making it all caps. And then if I want to change subtitle, I click on subtitle. And then remember, we need to have subtitle highlighted. And then when we can call it text down here. And then we've got fancy text. And now if we run this through, and we'll just do it from right here, it's going to run through and it's going to add that text. Now we can change this like anything, but this is animated text that we have here. And we've got all these crazy different options in here. There's a lot to choose from when you're getting started out. This isn't something you need to learn how to create inside of Motion. Let's go to build in and out. And you'll see right here, if I was to drop this one over top of this, and then we click out here, notice this one has title, subtitle, information, description. If you have a whole bunch of these, like let's say we don't have information for 4 spots, I can click on title and I can just delete it and it will run like normal. It won't have that box. It's just not going to have anything in the type there. So I could start here and I could put fancy. Then we can do here, we can do titles. And then maybe we'll put Final Cut Pro here. Looks like I didn't click on it. And then we'll Final Cut Pro X. That. And so now when we run this through, it's just not going to have anything in that one title position. So we won't see it. We're just using the 3. And this is something normal that happens when you're doing any sort of text in the program. One last thing that I forgot to mention is that if you do create some sort of title and it's something that you think you might use over and over again, you can come up here and you can save that information. So you've got a couple different ways. So you can save and format the attributes. You can save appearance and attributes, or you can save all format and all appearance attributes. So one thing you can see right down here, I've created one at some point, I guess, and it gives us this sort of color. I'm not sure exactly what I did to it, but So you can save something that can be definite time saver if it's something that you like and you're going to use over and over again. Well, that is basically how you add text to your video in Final Cut Pro. One thing I should mention is I do have a Facebook page, and you're going to notice because the information is in the description below, but it's really for Photoshop, Lightroom, and Bridge and stuff like that. But anybody who's on any of my tutorials for Final Cut Pro is definitely welcome to use it. Because what happens is a lot of times in the comments below, people ask me questions. And in those questions, I can't answer because I can't see what you're doing on the screen. I created the Facebook page only, not because I wanted to sit there and have a different way to interact, was because I can't answer questions sometimes unless I can see something. So it allows you to either post a picture or a video of what your issue is, and it makes it a whole lot easier for me to help you out. That's it for today. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up if you found this helpful. Any comments or questions, you can leave those below, and don't forget to subscribe.